We are live from Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit, for what is now the third day in a row of fully padded practices for the Denver Broncos. And there's a lot of questions that we still have remaining. One, who's the next Denver Bronco in line to get a payday from George Paton and Sean Payton? And how will Courtland Sutton's extension impact the timing of the discussions with Nik Bonitto, Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, and many other guys who are looking to get a little bit of extra scratch from their Denver Broncos? Plus, we got some new faces in town yesterday, 7 in total tryout players brought in, a handful of which were in the inside linebacker room, where depth has recently been tested with injuries to Drew Sanders, dealing with a ligament injury in his foot, and Alex Singleton, who will miss at least a week with a broken thumb. All things to come on today's rundown, but we will begin with some contract talk as it relates to the Denver Broncos. We obviously got the news that Courtland Sutton earlier this week signs a 4-year, $92 million extension, inking him with the Denver Broncos for what could be the remainder of his NFL career, allowing him to start and finish with one organization here in Denver. That's right. But how do those discussions now change for Nik Bonitto, Zach Allen, and John Franklin Myers? Who should the Broncos prioritize in terms of the next person to sign? Which player has the most potential to have an impact right away? That's where things get a little bit subjective, let's say, because if you're just stacking up the position groups, right? Zach Allen, interior defensive lineman, defensive end. John Franklin Myers, same situation. Nik Bonitto, pass rusher. That lends itself to probably favoring Nik Bonitto as the pass rusher being the more impact level position, traditionally speaking, on a defense. You also factor in who's already been paid. Nik Bonitto, not so much. He hasn't made a lot of money by NFL terms, certainly a lot of money for somebody like myself at right around $3 million over the course of his rookie contract thus far. Zach Allen already received a payday in his NFL career of a big nature. John Franklin Myers already received a big payday in his NFL career. Youth, another factor there. Nik Bonitto younger than the likes of John Franklin Myers and certainly of Zach Allen. But I will say this. John Franklin Myers reporting, I guess it being reported by Chris Thomason, that John Franklin Myers has not had any type of contract negotiation talk with his team and the Denver Broncos up to this point. And the word coming from his camp saying that they don't think anything at this point is certainly getting done before the season. That is a pretty telling statement about where the Broncos' heads are at, about their contract extensions coming up, and where they stand in the pecking order between the likes of Zach Allen, Nik Bonitto, and John Franklin Myers. Probably not the best position in the pecking order for a guy like JFM, and certainly something that you could see him using as rationale and reason as to why he's been so vocal on social media about feeling underappreciated and underpaid right now here in Denver. So that kind of narrows it to two-horse race for right now. Doesn't mean that nothing with JFM can't happen at some point during the season, but it clearly puts him lower on the priority list for the Denver Broncos than his two defensive counterparts. So if it's a two-horse race between Nik Bonitto and Zach Allen on who's going to get paid next, who's going to and who will, can sometimes be two different things. So I guess I'll just frame it as, from my perspective, who should get paid first between those two. And I actually think it's Zach Allen. I understand that Nik Bonitto is an up-and-coming player at the edge rush position, somebody who has clearly started to take off at a pretty significant trajectory as he's found more footing within Vance Joseph's defense, going from 1.5 sacks a couple of years ago and looking like he might be lost in a shuffle to 8 sacks 2 years ago, and then now coming off of a 13.5 sack season where he was one of the better pass rushers in the NFL at sack production. He seems like a logical choice, and I suppose maybe you could make the argument there's no wrong answer, but Zach Allen, I think, can't be understated the impact that he has, not just on the defense as a whole as being an anchor and a stalwart of that front four, but the help that he provides pass rushers like Nik Bonitto and Jonathan Cooper by being such a disruptive force, a top 100 level player in the NFL, Pro Bowl caliber player, even whether he got voted in or not, all pro level player. He provides such a disruptive nature in the middle of that defensive line that it forces opposing offenses to not be able to just key in on Nik Bonitto or Jonathan Cooper with double teams and kick out extra protection to the outside. It forces them to maintain that integrity over the guard and the center, and sometimes maybe pinch help in the center, allowing guys to tee off along the outside. It was the perfect symbiotic relationship that we saw with Von Miller and Derek Wolfe and how they worked as Batman and Robin together. I think that Zach Allen, with the caliber of player that he is and what he has meant to this front four and to this Broncos defense as a whole, is more consistent and more trustworthy right now than what we're seeing from Nik Bonitto. Not that Nik Bonitto didn't show tons of promise and positive signs, nor do I not expect Nik Bonitto to go out and do some of the same things he did last season here in 2025. But I think the Broncos have an opportunity and a leverage point to be able to say, hey, we want you to go out there and prove that you're a 13, 14, 15, maybe 16 sack guy in the NFL one more time. And then, just like it was with Courtland Sutton when they had him prove it with some incentives, he does it, he hits them all, and then he gets his big payday. I think the Broncos are well within their rights, and there's logic behind doing that here with Nik Bonitto. Some new faces that we got here in Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. There were 7 tryout players that came to the facility yesterday, 4 of which were along the inside linebacker room. You can see the names there on the screen. You have Chris Barnes, undrafted free agent out of UCLA, who spent 2 years as a starter with the Packers in 2020 before injuries kind of sent his career in a different direction. Garrett Wallow, a 5th rounder out of TCU, who was most recently with the Titans and missed all of last year with a pec injury. So clearly something he's bouncing around with. Anthony Hines, someone who was picked up by the Cowboys as an undrafted free agent in 2021. And a little bit of a youngster in Jalen Walker. The other 3 are 26 to 27 years old. Jalen Walker, 22-year-old rookie from Indiana, who was just cut by the Raiders last week, but came in for a pre-draft visit with the Broncos earlier this year. So somebody that Denver already has familiarity with as they made their pre-draft evaluations going into April of this past year. When it comes to the inside linebacker room, there's clearly been depth that's already being tested in a room where injuries were the primary concern. Both of your starters, Drake Greenlaw and Alex Singleton, coming off of significant lower body injuries in the past season or so. Then you've got your primary backup, one of your primary backups in Drew Sanders, dealing with a ligament issue in his foot that's going to cause him to miss possibly 2 months bleeding into the regular season in 2025. And so you've got injury questions and concerns with your starters. Alex Singleton breaks his thumb, adding another injury to the list of things he's going to have to navigate. He may only miss a week and a half to 10 days, but that's just to get him back out on the field in a club, not certainly to where he can be back at full capacity. So let's not be surprised if we see the likes of Justin Sternad and Lavelle Bailey pick up a little bit more responsibility. It was a significantly noticeable day for Lavelle Bailey today, who seemed to make the most of his opportunity, stepping in with those extra reps in place of Alex Singleton. And when it comes to 9-on-7 and the team periods, he was an absolute run stuffer. Meeting guys like Audric Estime, who also has had a pretty good couple of days of padded practices himself, meeting him in the hole, blowing up plays and being disruptive at the line of scrimmage, and just being able to show that he has some of that same sideline-to-sideline tracking ability as a second-year player out of Fresno State that we like and we want to see more of from the starters in Alex Singleton and Drake Greenlaw. So when you're looking at this inside linebacker room as a whole, you've got Lavelle Bailey, who stepped up in a major way today, Justin Sternad, who's already got familiarity within this offense, and then a handful of brand new names, guys that we may have never heard before. I certainly hadn't prior to today and yesterday's practice, and I would not be surprised at all if 1 or 2 of those names are not only signed to the Broncos roster during the duration of camp here, but could potentially, with the depth concerns that we have at inside linebacker here with the Broncos, make their way onto the active roster when the actual games roll around in September. There is so much to keep track of here at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. We are live once again for Broncos training camp. We will be chronicling all things. We will see if we get yet another day consecutively of fully padded practices, something that Brandon Stokely, Mark Schlereth, myself, and A lot of us here at camp before practice started speculated there was no way that they were going to be able to do that or justify doing that, but they have, and it's exciting because when the pads are on and the pads are popping, the guys are able to use that physicality that they've been pent up with for the majority of the offseason, and we get the most realistic look in a practice setting of what it could look like in game situations. So we will be here live on the air at 104.3 The Fan, online at denversports.com, and all across our social media channels on shows like Denver Sports Daily, The Rundown, and Orange and Blue Today, giving you everything you need to know up to the minute and in real time. We'll be live at the same place and the same time tomorrow.